Hello, this is BugPowderDust, and thank you once again for joining me for another World of Tanks video. After a little bit of time away playing PlanetSide 2, I am back to playing World of Tanks. It's a bit like an addiction that you can't quite shake, you always come back to it. So what I've done is I've been playing for about a month or so now, and it seems that the standard of gameplay while I've been away hasn't really increased. And rather than just getting cross and raging at the people who can't play Roel or show their side or rear armour to the enemy, etc, etc, what I thought I'd do is I'd actually try and contribute to perhaps helping newer players who don't really understand maybe the mechanics of the game or having other issues with the gameplay, and I thought I'd create an absolute beginner's guide to World of Tanks. This is going to be, I think, a fairly long video. I'm going to try and cover as many aspects of it as I can rather than break it up into separate videos. So what I'll do in the description is I'll break up the different subjects of the video and I'll list those so you can skip ahead or skip back as necessary. Okay, without further ado, what I've done is I've actually created a brand new user, so you'll be seeing it from a brand new user's point of view, which I think will be most useful rather than seeing my garage straight away, which is 10,000 games in or so, and may not look exactly the same as your garage when you first start. Anyway, so I'm going to log in. Let's just get on with it. So the first thing you're going to see when you log in is your garage. Now, if you are familiar with maybe other games like War Thunder or World of Warplanes, there are a couple of differences really with the garages. The first thing you'll see when you log in, as you can see here, is Wargaming have improved the tutorials a little bit from what they used to be. So what I would say is go through and do the in-game tutorials. You do learn basic battle skills, but what I will say is definitely go ahead and do them. You will get experience, you will get credits, and it's worth just basically going through those just to pick up some basic tips. What this video is really designed to do is try and give you information over and above the basic tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and decline that straight away. Right, so what you'll see in front of you is your garage. Now you'll notice that the garage is looking a little bit dirty, a little bit shabby. That's because you have a standard account, as you can see in the top right hand corner. I will cover the different accounts again shortly, standard and premium accounts, and we'll cover that. So let me go over the UI just so you understand what's going on. There's quite a lot on the screen. This is your selected tank. The guys in the top left hand corner are your crew for that tank. Now these guys start at 100%, and I think that's the same for all of these basic starter tanks. Yeah. So that was certainly new from when I started playing. These guys start at 100%. 100% means that they are 100% skilled in their job. And if you hover over, you'll see that this is the commander and this is the driver, and it tells you a little bit more about their skills if you hover over them. When a crew member gets to 100%, they can then specialise, but I'll come to that again in a separate part of the video here. You can restart the battle tutorial up here in the top left hand corner should you want to, a bit later on if you decline the tutorials. The missions tab up here, what missions are basically is they are little incentives that Wargaming introduced about 1 or 2 patches ago, and they are kind of little achievements within the game. So for instance, if you win a team battle, you get 1.2 times experience, 1.2 times credits, or 20% extra, for instance. I'm not going to go into these now, but have a flick through and just have a look at it. I wouldn't worry too much about missions when you start, because to be honest, a lot of these missions are kind of geared towards doing a lot of, for instance, this one, cause 50,000 hit points of damage in random battles. At these lower tiers, you're unlikely to do that within 24 hours. You really got to be kicking out 2, 3, 4,000 hit points of damage a game, which you're very unlikely to do at these lower tiers. So don't worry about the missions too much now. Okay, so back to the UI. Now, as I said, you've seen in front of you, you have one starter tank for each of the current nations that you're able to play in the game. So you've got the Russians here, United States, UK, Germany, France, and China. China's the most recent addition to the game, and if you want to have a look at the tech tree, so if you're quite interested in seeing what tanks you could possibly get into, up here you click on the tech tree and you'll see tech tree scrolls from left to right, and up here these symbols are Roman numerals for the different tiers. A tier is like the level of the tank. So you start at tier 1. The tick means you have that tank in your garage. The NC-31 for instance, or again the French tier 1 here. Some of these tiers, the tier trees, are more fleshed out than others. So for instance, the Germans who've been in the game right from the start, you'll see they've got a huge amount of tanks in their tier structure. The Americans have also been in from the start, not quite as crowded as the Germans, but fairly well represented, and the same for the Russians. As you can see, they've been in the game right from the start. British were added afterwards, so they're a little bit slimmer. French also slimmer, and the Chinese were the last to be added. Japanese tanks are coming actually in patch 8.10, which is currently on the test server. And this is something worth mentioning actually. This is version 8.9 that we're currently on. Most of these features should still be around if you're watching this video in the distant future, but these are all correct as of version 8.9. Okay, what else can we show you? So you've seen the tech tree. So these are the sort of tanks that you can get to. What do these little symbols mean? This means that I need to earn 150 experience to unlock this next tank. And let's look at that in a little bit more detail. Go back to the garage and click on research on the right hand side here. This relates to your current tank. So this is the tank we currently have, it's the NC-31, and the tick means I have it equipped. So using the same kind of iconography as with the tech tree. So and this is what I've got equipped on the tank right now. And again, the little star means experience, and that's up here. Okay, this is a list of experience that you have on that tank. So currently we've got none because we haven't played any games. But if I earn 30 experience in game, and again I'll come on to that and I'll cover that, I can then unlock this gun. I can then unlock the radio, the engine and the tracks. And again I'll come on to the modules and equipment for the tank a bit later on. This is just really showing you around the UI. Moving to the right, you have your depot. So this is everything that you have in your depot, funnily enough, so in your storeroom basically. At the start of the game you haven't got anything, but you'll start to accrue and collect modules, shells, equipment for your tanks. And as you move up through the tech tree, you'll have stuff left over that is no longer useful to you because you might not be thinking of going back down to that previous tank you've just sold maybe. And in here you can basically sell that stuff, generally for half the price you bought it for, so beware of that. The store is where you purchase new tanks, new modules. Don't tend to buy shells from here. There's another way of doing that. You can buy equipment from here, but again there's other ways of doing that as well, and consumables can be bought from here. Again, I'll cover this in a little bit more detail later, but just be aware that you can buy stuff from the store, or you can buy it from the tech tree directly. So for instance, if over here, if I wanted to buy this tier 8 tank, and I'll cover these in very shortly, I could just click from here, click the button, and it would cost me 12,250 gold. I don't have to go to the store to buy that, although I can. So there's a couple of different ways of doing that. That's the store. Service record, this has got a massive facelift from when I first started playing, and looks much better now, gives you a lot more information than it used to. So this is a summary of what battles you've been in, your percentage of victories versus losses, hit ratio, etc, etc, and any awards that you've earned would be shown here. Now what I like about this is if you hover over an award, it shows you what you need to do to actually, or what's left to do to unlock that award. Again, this is a great improvement. Never had this until quite recently, so these are quite nice things to aim towards. Statistics, as you'd expect, goes into a little bit more detail. Shows you what you fought, how many games you fought in each class of vehicle, by your nation or by tier, the vehicles themselves. But because I've not fought any battles on this character, it doesn't show me any list of vehicles here. Right, the next thing to show you is the explanation of the different classes of tank. This is pretty fundamental to the game. For this we need to look at the tech tree, and let's look at, say, the German tech tree, which is a little bit more descriptive. You may have noticed that on each tank there is an abbreviation of the name over here. So this is the Leith tractor, and you'll notice that there's a little diamond and the symbol 1. Symbol 1 obviously is the tier, but this diamond symbol means it's a light tank, as you can see on the description. So there are 4 different classes of tank. You've got artillery, which is square. Now, artillery is also known as SPG, self-propelled gun. Now, when I first started playing this, I was under the impression, because I'm a bit of a World War II buff, that a self-propelled gun was something like a turretless tank destroyer, for instance the Stug 3 for the Germans, but I quickly learned that SPG in World of Tanks world means it's artillery. So that's the square. The triangle, the upside down triangle, means it's a tank destroyer, as you can see. Generally tank destroyers are turretless, although there are some notable exceptions, mainly the American tank line. They tend to have turreted tank destroyers. Turrets obviously have quite a lot of advantage and disadvantages as well. And again, you've got light tanks. Now as you move down the tree, some other tank options become available. So for instance, you have this, the heavy tank. That's the diamond with 2 lines through it. That's a heavy tank. Heavy tanks first appear for the Germans at tier 4, as you can see. And they also get medium tanks as well, with 1 line through it. These symbols will become second nature, so I wouldn't worry too much about having to memorise them. To be quite honest, the rule of thumb is self-propelled guns or artillery are very lightly armoured, but have this unique advantage of being able to have what's called, I guess, the eye in the sky. So you've got like a satellite view, and this is how you play artillery. You're in that satellite view, if you like, and then you can fire down on tanks that have been spotted by your team. The disadvantage is that you take a long time to aim, and your reload time is really, really long, sometimes 30 seconds, so that's the downside. Tank destroyers, these do vary from race to race, but generally tank destroyers have quite high alpha. Now alpha means that it's their first hit, if you like, their strike. They do quite high damage. Tank destroyers generally fire a little bit faster than their counterparts, say heavy tanks with the same gun. Also, tank destroyers have better camouflage values, so they're a lot better at remaining hidden. Tank destroyers generally have less armour than maybe a comparable heavy tank, and so obviously that's the downside. There's obviously upsides and downsides to each tank. Light tanks are very fast, generally. They are very nimble, very manoeuvrable. Their camouflage rating, unlike all the other tanks, does not disappear when they move. So when they move, they keep their camo rating. So basically a light tank's survivability is based on its speed and the ability for it to stay hidden and or keep moving. They can't go head to head with tanks. Medium tanks are kind of a cross between light tanks and heavy tanks. They do lose their camo rating when they move, but they are reasonably well armoured. Again, this is a generalisation. It does vary from some tanks and some races. They generally have decent guns, decent rate of fire. They can take a bit of a beating, unlike light tanks. And they tend to have a decent view range, which is something I forgot to mention. Scout tanks generally have a very good view range as well. What the view range does is it enables them to spot tanks for the rest of your team. So that's a bit of an overview of the tank classes. So the next thing is where do the battles take place? They take place on maps. Now there's a lot of different maps in the game. I don't know quite how many there are at the moment, but you're talking probably 30 or so. And these, as you can see, are all listed on the left here. This is merely a training room mode to train in, if you like. Don't get too caught up on this. I'm just doing this just to demonstrate the maps. And the maps vary from kind of summer maps, you've got desert maps, winter maps here, and they do vary in their layout. No, Dragon Ridge, I think this has been withdrawn actually, so you can't actually get a public game on Dragon Ridge, but so you will get to know these maps very well as you start playing. Now as a new player, I think up to tier 2 or maybe 3, I can't remember, you'll be limited to I think 3 or 4 different maps, of which I think Ensk is one, certainly Malinovka is the other one, and you'll see Malinovka probably quite a lot when you first start to play. The symbols mean that's where your team in green starts and the enemy team in red starts. So it's worth just having a browse through really and just seeing what sort of games you can expect. There's some really good maps that people really enjoy playing on, and other maps which aren't so good and tend to introduce quite a lot of camping. Now camping is an expression you'll probably hear quite a lot, and what camping means is that both sides are very static. Nobody really pushes forward because nobody wants to get shot and killed, and the games can be quite static and boring. Now those maps tend to get withdrawn, and Wargaming tend to rejig them slightly, just to make sure that that this sort of thing doesn't happen, because they don't want people to camp too much either. Now, one map that was typical for this was a map called Kamarin, which, as you can see here, this has been redesigned and put back into the game, but really I think it's still quite campy. They have changed the map a little bit, and they've changed the start locations as well. These flags used to be in the middle of the map, so green was here and red was here. Of course, out in the middle of nowhere, it made it very, very hard to capture. But anyway, I digress. So this is a list of the maps that you can start playing on. Now, what are the different game types? Well, generally you've got you'll be in a random battle, and it's 15 players versus 15 players. You will go into a matchmaker. Now, what the matchmaker does is it matches you up against not players of the same skill, and that's a controversial move, which I'm not going to talk about now, but you'll get matched into tanks of a similar kind of rating. When we first started playing long ago, there was no kind of tier limit, at least I don't think there was, as to the sort of tanks that you could face. So you could actually end up facing a lot harder tanks, a lot higher level in tiers than you were yourself, which made it quite challenging to play. As it stands at the moment, with a couple of notable exceptions, light tanks and arty, you will only face a maximum of 2 tiers above you. So for instance, and that is actually, I think with the tier 1 tanks that only face tier 2 maximum, I believe. But certainly once you get up to this level, say for instance if you're in a Panzer IV, as you can see here, you will not face anything higher than a tier 7, and the same further up. I said there are a couple of notable exceptions. Artillery is different, and also scouts. That's a whole scouts, and by that I mean like certain light tanks. They will start facing quite high tiers, and I'll cover that again shortly. So that is your random battle. You also can platoon, as in you can join up with a squad of two of your friends or another friend, to a maximum of 3 players in total, and then what you'll do is you'll then stay with each other and you'll join battles together. A good platoon can make a real difference to the game, because if you're all communicating maybe on TeamSpeak or Ventrilo, you can coordinate yourself and you can actually be very, very effective. It's widely acknowledged that playing in a platoon will increase your survivability and make the game a lot more enjoyable. Team battle, this is fairly new. What you can do is you can basically set up a team of 5 to 7 people, maximum of tier 8, and you can then have a certain amount of points to distribute on each team, and then you can go and just play each other in kind of like set pieces. Tank company is like a team battle but a bit bigger. I'm not going to go into too much details with that. Special battles I've never really done, but that's pretty much clan wars. I'm not going to go into that now, but you can join a clan. That's like a group of people, like I guess a corporation in EVE or a guild in World of Warcraft. Then you can participate in what's called clan wars. Or you can do team training, which is the screen that you saw earlier. You can join someone else's training room if they've left it open, or you can create your own training room and just drive around the map with a friend, get to know the map better, do a little bit of shooting, maybe training, see what's what. Actually, that's a very useful mode for familiarising yourself with new maps. But as I said, generally you'll be in random battles most of the time. Now with random battles, there are actually 3 different types of random battle types. So random battle types, you have 15 players versus 15 players. Standard battle is basically you have 1 base each, and the aim of the game is to wipe out every single person on the other team, or to capture their base, whichever comes first. To capture a base, you just basically need to sit in the enemy base circle until a counter counts up. Encounter battle you won't get until you get to tier 4 vehicles. Is basically an encounter battle is you have just 1 base, and you'll start on either side of it in different teams, and you either have to kill all the opposing team or you have to capture the base. Assault, again, this won't pop up until after tier 6. That is when you will start on either side of a map, although one team is defending a base and one team is assaulting the base. These are not necessarily to everyone's flavour. You can untick those modes if you don't want to play them. Personally, I don't really like playing assault very much, but encounter can be quite good fun. So you can have them on or off as you see fit. While I'm here, let me go through the settings with you, because these can be quite key to your gameplay, and it's worth knowing where these settings are. This top section here, as you'd expect, is to do with chat. You can send some messages, so this is the in-game chat. It will basically star out or asterisk out bad words, so if you play with maybe children or there are children watching, then it's worthwhile ticking that on, because things can get a little bit hot-blooded, let's say. So it's worth ticking that on. hide spam, display data. I'm not going to go through all of these. A lot of these are self-explanatory. Enable battle recording. What this does, contrary to what you might think, is it doesn't record the battle for you in-game. What it does is it will save the battle in the World of Tanks format. So if you want to, when the game's over and you think, oh, that was amazing, let me just watch that again, you can absolutely do that. You can come out of your World of Tanks client, that must be closed, then you can go to your World of Tanks install folder, and you'll find a replays folder, and then you'll find the battle you just played in there, providing this is ticked on. This does not record it for you in a video format. You can then turn it into a video afterwards. Let me just pick out another couple here that may be important. Show vehicle tier. That shows the tier of the vehicles in the team panel, which is the sidebars. And again, your mileage may vary with this, so you know, it's entirely up to you. So on to graphics. I'm not going to go into all the graphics settings. I don't know what triple buffering is compared to not triple buffering, for instance. But if you're colorblind, it's worth ticking that on. It makes the above icon vehicle markers, rather than red and green, it makes them purple and something else that I don't know. I can't remember now. I don't play with colorblind mode on, but it's worthwhile checking that. If you are colorblind, tick that on. It's actually very useful. If you are struggling with your PC, you can turn the settings down here. Certainly draw distance will have an effect. Not displaying foliage will have an effect. Extra effects in sniper mode, play about with that and see what you like. That basically turns off judder and smoke when you fire if you're in sniper mode, which is basically when you're kind of zoomed in. So have a play with that, see what you think. Volume, I'm not going to talk through this, it's all very self-explanatory. Enable voice chat. I don't know anybody that uses this. People tend to use TeamSpeak, so I can't comment on this at all. Controls, worth looking at this. Get used to these controls, you'll be using them an awful lot. Tune the sensitivity to something that suits you. If you want to invert, that is reverse the mouse controls, you can do it over here. And it's said it's worth getting used to these. One thing that I would say is you've got auto aim. Use this sparingly. World of Tanks is really all about knowing where kind of weak spots on tanks are, especially if you have a bit of a weak gun. If you have auto aim on, it's just going to aim right dead center of a tank, which is kind of generally the turret, and you don't want to be shooting at the turret most of the time. So this is very useful if you're on a fast scout and you're circling an enemy vehicle, maybe at a distance or even if you're up close. You can click it on sometimes. You know, professional players do use auto aim sparingly, but on the whole, use that sparingly. I thought I'd better mention that now. Consumables, I'll cover that. Messages, these can be quite useful for quickly acknowledging a team request. If someone says, for instance, help, they press F7. You can then press F5 rather than type yes, I'm coming to help you or whatever. They get the message. And I guess the beauty of using these F keys is, say they're playing on a different language client to you. If you press F5, it will say affirmative in your chat, but I'm assuming it will translate that to what affirmative means in their language because you've used the F key, I guess. Again, I don't know that for sure. Minimap, very, very important. I cannot stress the importance enough to new players. Use the minimap when you play. Be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware of where your team are, where your team aren't. At the lower levels, your radio is not very powerful, so it's not that easy to see where the rest of your team is, even if it's a big map. But it's good to get into this habit. Make the minimap bigger. Zoom in. Using the equals and minus keys. So these are default, these can be changed. Use the minimap. I cannot stress that enough. So many players are just not aware of so much that goes on in the battlefield, and the minimap is your friend. Use it. Moving on to the reticle, I don't really change this. You can change the reticle in here, you can make little bits of changes if you want to. Again, your mileage may vary. Find something that you enjoy or like. Most people, you will use mods. Mods are modifications which you can download and you can add to World of Tanks. I will cover that, maybe not this video, see how we are for time, but most people will not change it here, they'll use a mod instead. Team markers, these are quite important as well. This is what you'll see when you're in game, and these are the defaults. Now notice that this is settings for the enemy team, and then our team is here, and destroyed vehicles. Let me show you, vehicle icon. You might find that useful, you might not. Turn it on, turn it off. This is how you will see it on the battlefield without pressing the Alt key. Vehicle tier. Personally, I find that more useful than the icon, but it's entirely up to you. Let's turn them all on. Health indicator, I find really useful. What I do is I have it in the HP left out of total, so it shows me how much they got left and how much they had to start off with. Again, this is a personal thing. Player's name, I don't care about the player's name particularly, so I'll tick that off. Don't want to make this too cluttered. That for me is relatively good. That is fine, to be honest. Now, what I do is at the bottom here, the Alt key, if you want to see something, maybe you can click on the player's name here. So that's what you'll see, and if you press the Alt key, you'll see this. That to me is good enough. Again, you can download mods and it will give you a whole raft more information, but I'm not going to go into that right now. So this is something that you can do. Click on apply. You can then apply these settings, these same settings to markers for your team. You just copy what you got here, tick tick, I'll tick that, and then click apply. And that's what you'll see when the game starts. Right, so now let's move on very quickly. Let's talk about silver and gold. Silver is the in-game currency. You can earn silver. You earn that in-game, and silver is used for buying modules for your tank and tanks themselves, and also for training crew. You'll see here that this gun, for instance, if I want to buy the 13.2mm Hotchkiss, it will cost me 1600 silver, but it must be researched first. So research, if you look at the hover, it will cost me 30 experience to research it, 1600 silver to buy it. So every module you want to buy has a silver value. You cannot buy modules with gold, not directly. So silver is earned in-game. Generally, I would say, for me personally, I would never buy silver on the market. So you can buy items from wargaming with not direct money, sorry, with money. Generally, that's gold. But sometimes you can buy gold and silver packages. I would just tend to get the gold value instead. One thing you can do when you have gold is you can exchange gold for silver at exchange rate of 1 gold, and you get 400 silver. Again, personally, I've never done this. You can earn gold. You can earn silver. I would not recommend exchanging gold for silver. It's such a waste of money. I don't know anybody that does, to be honest, but that option is there should you need maybe just the extra, I don't know, 1,000 silver perhaps or something, and you're so desperate you can't wait, then by all means. So we've established silver can be earned. What's next? Gold. Gold is the currency that you use, and that has to be bought with real money. It can be earned in other ways. You can use gold to accelerate or buy crew training. So you'll see my crew is 100%. When you go up to the next tank, the crew have to be retrained. You can use gold to retrain them up to 100% still. You can use silver, then they'll retrain at a lower level, or you can use no money at all, and they will train at an even lower level. You can buy premium tanks with gold. So for instance here, you can see, if I don't want to grind all my way up through here, I can go ahead and buy a Lerva, for instance, for 12,500 gold. Can't do that with silver. I wouldn't recommend it. Not when you first start playing the game. Another key thing that you can do with gold is you can purchase what's called a premium account up here in the top right hand corner. And you can see that premium account costs you a certain amount of money or gold for a certain amount of time. Again, you pay your gold, you take your choice. I mean, for me personally, and certainly for working people who maybe can only play at a weekend every now and again, 3 days is actually pretty good, 650. Although the month is, or even a week is 1250, a month is 2.5. So, for two lots of 7, you can play for a month pretty much. So, now the difference with a premium and a standard account, as it says here, is you get 50% credits and experience. This is quite significant, and it's certainly worth considering, certainly when you start playing the game, which kind of leads us nicely on to experience. What is experience? Experience is the reward you get for doing certain things in a game of World of Tanks. So things like doing damage is a key way of earning experience. Then you've got things like spotting enemy tanks, and then your team doing damage to those tanks. This is where scouts can earn a lot of experience and silver off the back of that, is by being smart. What a smart scout does is it stays alive, it spots enemy tanks for your own heavy hitters to then blast with bigger guns. You can do what's called passive scouting, where you sit in a bush and you just watch, you don't fire. And an enemy scout that is sat in a bush, that is not moving and is just merely watching, is not firing more importantly, is very hard to detect. And what it can do is earn a lot of silver and experience for itself, and basically win the game for the team. Scouts are not to be underestimated, so that's a very good way of earning silver by spotting. Another example of how to earn silver is for tracking an enemy vehicle which is then, once it's been immobilized for however long, is then damaged by other members of your team. This is again a fairly new addition to the game. By tracking an enemy vehicle, you just made it immobile. You never got any score off the back of that, whereas Wargaming introduced it 2, 3, 4 patches ago, where if you immobilize an enemy vehicle by tracking it, you will then get some of the share of the damage that gets done to that vehicle by your own side, which I think is fair enough, because you know, if you've immobilized that tank, you're making it very, very easy for your own side to hit, especially artillery, who will thank you for it. So that's some of the ways of earning experience. Now, experience links into the amount of silver you earn as well. I really don't know exactly how the calculations are worked out. There are certainly a lot of other things to be done with gaining experience. So for instance, if you sit in your base and you do damage, maybe sniping or whatever, you will earn less, I can guarantee it, than if you were at the front and you did the same sort of damage. It's about how close you are to the battle, how I think just to a certain degree how far you've travelled as well. So if you think, aha, I know what I'll do, I'll sit in the base and do nothing and just do a little bit of damage at the end, I really wouldn't recommend that. A, your team will hate you. B, your team will probably lose because you are absolutely already one tank down at the front line. And was I going 1, 2, 3 or ABC? 3 or C. What will happen is you'll get a lot less experience and money just by sitting back and doing nothing whatsoever, so I wouldn't recommend doing that. The other thing that there is a common misconception about that you really need to understand is that there is a difference between tank experience and crew experience. Tanks earn experience at the same rate as crews do generally. So for instance, if you earn 1000 XP in a battle, your tank gets 1000 XP, that will go up here, and that will go in this section here, and it will go towards earning experience for the next tank. That's fantastic. Your crew will also earn 1000 experience, but you have to actually go into the crew member itself to see what experience they've got. Again, this is not a very good example here, unfortunately, because they were at 100% already, but say they weren't at 100%, it would say here how much experience they had left until the next level, so until they reach 98% or 99%. And that is where the experience goes for crews. So your experience you earn does two things. It adds to the tank's experience level and also to your crews as well. There are sometimes differentials. For instance, you'll get Wargaming do specials where crews will earn 3 times experience. So if you earn 1000 experience in a game, your tank gets 1000, your crews get 3000. You do see people complaining on the forums that their tank didn't get 3000, but that's because they don't understand the difference between crew experience and tank experience, so that's worth noting. Okay, we'll come back to experience shortly, but let's talk about the tanks themselves. Depending on the sort of player you think you might be, or the sort of tanks you think you'll enjoy, it's worth noting the sometimes confusing differences between the different races of tanks. Let's start with the Germans. Now, the Germans are the tanks I've got the most experience with. German tanks tend to be middle of the road at everything. They don't really excel at any one particular thing. As a rule, German tanks have accurate guns with good aim time. They don't tend to do huge amounts of damage. They have decent all-round armour, and their speed is average. So they're kind of middle of the road, and again there are exceptions, and it's getting harder and harder to generalise, but really that's kind of the way that the Germans are. Accurate guns, not very powerful in terms of damage done, with good aiming time. The Russians, on the other side of the coin, are big punchy guns. They tend to do a lot of damage, tend to have slower aiming times. Their armour is, on the whole, very good at the front and not so great on the sides and rear. Again, it's really hard to generalise. It was a lot easier when World of Tanks sort of first came out, but not so much now. Speed-wise, generally faster than the Germans, for instance. They also have poor view range. That's the other thing in comparison to the Germans. The Germans' view range is slightly better. View range is the distance that you can see in your tank. So far away tanks. For instance, if you have a German tank versus a Russian tank, again generalizing, the German tank it's possible for the German tank to see the Russian tank before the Russian tank sees the German tank, so you can fire at tank and not be spotted in return. Again, your mileage may vary with the different tank types. The next one is the Americans. Americans tend to have, and again generalizing, very tough turret armour, certainly as you get up towards kind of tier 8, tier 7, tier 8. Their tanks tend to be quite fast, their guns tend to be a little bit more rapid firing, and the damage kind of falls in between the Germans and the Russians, again generalising. So American tanks are very popular. They have also turreted tank destroyers. So for instance, this is the tank destroyer line. Let's pick this one. So you'll see it's turreted, the T-49, it's got a turret. The Hellcat, very popular tank. It's fast, it's nimble, does a lot of damage, is a very, very nice tank. Has a very slow turret traverse, but it has a great gun. But it has a turret, more importantly. T-25-2 has a turret, T-28 turret. So one of the American tank destroyer lines are all turreted, and that's actually quite unique, because if you look at the other races, you'll see that the Russian tank destroyers, they are all fixed turrets, as you can see, apart from the Su-100Y, which I don't have this tank, but it looks like it has a turret, but that may be fixed, so I don't know about that one. But as a general rule of thumb, American tank destroyers are turreted. Then you have the French. The French tend to be lightly armoured with extremely good guns in terms of penetration. Again, they can be frustrating to play, but they have some real standout tanks, certainly as you get up towards tier 8, tier 9. The AMX 50-100s and 120s and the Batchat and Lorraine, great tanks. But you have to kind of be careful with them. They don't really have any tanks that are super heavy armoured like the Russian and the German tanks, for instance. British tanks can be quite a frustrating line to play, certainly at the lower levels. They tend to be, certainly with the heavy tanks, slow. The guns are a little bit anemic, a little bit weak. The armour is really good at the front, not so much at the sides and the rear. You know, I've not had a great deal of luck with the British heavies. I find them quite frustrating. I'm more of a kind of German tank player myself. And the Chinese, don't know a lot about them, to be honest. You see a lot of Russian-looking tanks in this line. I've never bothered with the Chinese line because I've progressed up the Russian line quite far. So, as I said, just play some games, see what you think, and you know, you might find yourself really enjoying a certain type of gameplay or game style. Maybe faster tanks are for you, maybe slower, heavily armoured tanks are for you, and I think you can make your choice kind of based upon that. Okay, now let's talk about crew training and equipping your tank. Crew training. Now, most crews will start at 50 or 75 or 100% when you buy them. 50% crews I personally would avoid like the plague. Buy crews at 75%. 50% crews are free, which is why they're attractive. But really, you will suffer. Your tank will be really suffering as a result in terms of gun reload, gun aim, moving, spotting. Spend the money, spend the silver, and get them at 75% as a minimum. If you want to be flash, you can go for gold and get 100% crews straight away. Let's have a look at a crew member. Right click, open personal file. Once a crew member, as I mentioned earlier, gets to 100%, they can then specialise. So what you can do is you can click on the skills and perks button, and you have a list of items here. This is the commander. Now, the commander is unique in that he can specialise in any one of the common skills, which any crew member can do, but he can also then specialise in some of his own skills, or he can specialise in one of the crew member skills, the gunner, radio operator, loader. The other crew members don't have this option. They can only specialise in the area that they are, so loaders can only specialise in loader skills. What is recommended does vary from tank type to tank type. So what's good for a medium tank or a scout tank is not the same for different side of tanks. So for instance, camouflage would be great for a scout tank or a light tank, which their primary focus, remember, is not to get spotted and to keep moving. So camo is great for them, not so much for a heavy tank, wouldn't make a lot of difference. I'm not going to go through all of these skills now because there are an awful lot of them, and I think you kind of get the idea. You can research these in your own time. The thing that I would say is, let me go through some of these. Mentor is actually very good. What it does is it says provides additional experience to all crew members except the commander. Mentor tends to be the first skill that I get on the commander because what it does is it accelerates the rest of the crew's learning. Recon, not so much, but Sixth Sense is also another key skill. What this does is if you're spotted, a little light bulb will pop up, and this means that they've spotted you. It only comes up 2 seconds after you've been spotted, but this can be invaluable to you not getting hit. As I said, I'm not going to go through all these now, but have a read through, see which one you kind of like the look of, and then go for that one. So let me just let me give you an example. I'm going to pick mental. I'll click on select. You'll see now that drops to this changes icon. The icon's changed up there as well. That's great. And then for the driver, you'll see now the driver has a choice of the common skills, or he has a choice of the driver skills, and that's it. What am I going to do with the driver? I am going to choose, just pick one for instance, vehicle rotation speed. That's always quite useful. Now, there are differences between these skills which are not immediately obvious. Some skills will take effect from the moment you choose them, and will get better and better as you get towards 100%. So as you earn experience, this will increase and increase and increase until you get to 100%. Then you can choose a second skill and a third skill, etc., etc. Up to 7, I believe it is. So for instance, if you hover over it, it says there, this is a perk. It comes into effect after it reaches 100%. So there's really no point in choosing this before you get to 100%. And then what you can do, you can then swap it by dropping the skill and swapping it over. But that does cost gold. You can use silver, but it will reduce the amount of skill you have in it. Skill. So this comes into effect after training starts. This effect will increase with skill level. So that is a good one to have. Now the two skills I've chosen, mental and so this one here is a skill, so that comes into effect straight away. And also this one, mental, that also comes into effect after training starts. So these are the ones to choose as you go through, and leave the perks which are only 100% effective when you get to 100%. Then you can switch over. That's really the best way of doing it. When you change tanks, you need to retrain the crew member, because unfortunately, and this is something that I find quite irritating, is that a set of crew, once you've trained them to the next tank, they only remember how to drive one tank. So if your crew have gone from, say, the Tiger to the Tiger 2, you retrain them to the Tiger 2, and then if you want to go back to the Tiger for whatever reason, you have to retrain them again. I think that's quite annoying. In another game, War Thunder for instance, your crew remember how to fly that previous vehicle, which kind of makes more sense to me, but you know, it's a game, it's not supposed to be realistic, so there you go. Now what you can do is you can retrain your crew to drive this vehicle. So at the moment they're 100%, and again this is not the best example in the world, but so you move them into a new vehicle, you'd click on current vehicle, and then you could choose to retrain them. You could choose for the money option, 10,000 silver, and then they will drop to 90%. Or if you want to keep them at the same level, you would pay with gold. Now at the moment there's a half price offer. Normally this is 200, normally that's 20,000 silver. So that's worth bearing in mind. Skills just gives you a choice to browse what skills there are. Personal data, you can change the look of the tanker, and you can change their name, but this costs 50 gold. Have I ever done that? Have I? Hell. I would not pay gold for this sort of thing. It's really not worth it. While we're talking about crew skills, it's probably worth mentioning why premium tanks can be actually really good for kind of power training your crew. One of the many advantages of having a premium tank, other than the fact that you can basically buy a higher tier tank than you would normally get in that space of time, you can obviously buy a tier 7 tank if you want to straight away. One of the other benefits is that it earns more silver for you. And a further benefit is that you can actually crew these premium tanks with any crew that you currently have in a tank of the same class. So for instance, this T15 Elite Light tank can be crewed by any of your tanks which have a light crew in them without retraining them. That is what I would stress. So for instance, say you have your Panzer 35T crew here, and they're happily grinding away the Panzer 35, and you buy the T15, what you can do is you can just take the crew out of the Panzer 35 and put it into the T15 without any retraining needed whatsoever. So what you can do is you can get your daily double, you can get your crew increase on the Panzer 35, great, then you pop them into the T15, then you get your daily double in the T15. The daily double is basically double the amount of experience that you gain for a tank's XP for that day. But I'll come to that later on in the video. The point I'm making is that you can get effectively double crew experience by moving them from tank to tank. And as I said, the premium tank benefit is that you don't have to retrain a crew when you move them from one tank to the other. Another benefit of this, of course, is that say you sell a tank and you have your crew sitting back in the barracks, and you have no plans to buy, say, another light tank, for instance, you can just pop them into the premium tank, and they keep on gaining experience by manning that tank, which is not something they could do if they were sat in the barracks. So that's a little bit about crew skills. The other thing that you can do is equip your tank, obviously. So on the research tree, you'll see here that your tank currently has these modules fitted. Now these are what's called stock items. Stock items are modules that come with the tank. You haven't got to buy these. When you buy the tank, you get these items. So this tank is currently stock fitted completely. These are things that you can buy to improve the parts of the tank. So for instance, if we right click on this gun, look at characteristics, we can right click on the next gun and look at characteristics, and you can compare the two. It's important that you understand how this works. Let me compare like for like, actually. We'll come back to the other thing in a minute. So for instance, the rate of fire, this is rounds per minute. So you've got 24 rounds per minute on this gun and 2609 rounds per minute on this gun. Now this is, as the gun comes, this is affected by crew skills, by your gunner's skill. The penetration of the shell that this gun can fire, the shells this gun can fire. You'll see there are 3 ratings, 29, 46 and 18. 29 millimeters is what the average penetration of this gun is when you fire a normal shell, an armor-piercing shell at the bottom. Okay. If you fire an APCR or armor-piercing composite rigid, that is a gold shell. It's a premium shell that you can buy. Your penetration increases to 46. You can buy a high explosive round for this gun. This is not a gold item, this is a silver item. Like armor piercing, it's silver, and that does 18 penetration. The damage below that corresponds to the item above. So the armor piercing, 29 penetration, 30 average damage. The gold round, 46 average penetration, 30 average damage. And your high explosive, 18 penetration, 36 average damage. As a rule, high explosive is very good for doing lots of damage without penetrating. I mean, I say lots of damage. This is kind of wandering into a minefield, but at this low level, don't bother with high explosive. As you get higher up into the tier levels, high explosive becomes very viable as an option, especially if you're firing high explosive at an open top vehicle. But we're getting a little bit advanced there. But just be aware that high explosive is there as an option. So on this gun, for instance, you'll see that this gun is significantly better. Its penetration is 40 average, 74 average with gold ammunition, and the same for high explosive. However, the damage increases as well. So 40 average pen, 36 average damage, 74 and 36, and 18 and 42. So this high explosive round, it does more damage even though the penetrations remain the same. However, accuracy at 100 meters, 0.54. What does this mean? This means that the gun will deviate 0.54, but I don't know what the 0.54 actually means, the unit of measurement, but basically the lower that is, the better. So 0.46, this is more accurate. That's still lousy in terms of accuracy. You're really looking at, let me show you a German gun at a bit of a higher level, for instance. You'll see what I'm talking about. So let's look at the iconic Tiger with the iconic 88. That has an accuracy of 0.34. As you get down to 0.34, 0.33, those guns are accurate, very accurate, at 100 meters. As it gets further away, the guns will lose a little bit of accuracy, and they will certainly lose penetration. So 0.34 is a good gun. That's a good accurate gun. Let's go back to this tech tree here. So let's go back and look at this gun. This gun has what's called an auto loader. And this has a certain amount of shells in the magazine. You've got 15 shells in the magazine, and every time you press the button, the shell will be auto-loaded. The next shell will be auto-loaded. So the advantage is you can fire very quickly. Time of one shell loading, 0.13 seconds. The reload is much longer than it would be on this gun, for instance, whereas it doesn't show the reload time here, but the reload time generally is a couple of seconds. Damage is lower, but you're firing more often, The accuracy is poor. These are not long-range snipey guns, to be quite honest. Let me go back to the aiming time. Aiming time 2.3. This is how long it takes for the crosshairs to kind of close in on the vehicle you're firing at, and the weight 110. So that's the next kind of gun up. You'll notice that the marking here is a tier 1 gun, tier 1 turret, tier 2 turrets. Let's have a look quickly at the differences of the turrets. So for instance, this turret has 16mm of frontal armour, 16mm of side armour, and 14mm of rear armour, as it says here. This turret is significantly better because this has 22mm of side and front armour and 16 at the back. Traverse speed. What does traverse speed mean? This means how quickly the turret can turn. So the higher the number, the better. It turns at 38 degrees per second. This turns much more, well, not much more, 2 degrees more slowly. View range. If you remember, I mentioned that earlier. This is how far the tank can see from its own position. So 280 is an improvement on 250. Turrets, although it doesn't say, generally give your tank more hit points as well. So it's certainly worth upgrading unless there's a really good reason why you don't want to. A couple of the tanks, and only a couple of the tanks, have turrets that are more favourable, that are the stock turrets. Maybe they have a faster traverse speed, and you have a slower traverse speed with the better turret. But it's entirely up to you. Generally, the higher the tier, the better the equipment, and certainly that's the same true with turrets. Radios, very simple things. The more radio range you've got, I mean, that is a significant improvement. The better radio range you've got, the more that you can see of your own team. Your minimap will show your team. If your radio range is poor, you can not only not see much of your own team if it's a big map, but also you'll miss out on enemy vehicles as well. Engines are pretty self-explanatory. They are broken into kind of 3 categories: engine power, chance of fire on impact, and weight. Engine power, hit points. Sorry, not hit points. Horsepower. The higher the horsepower, the more powerful the engine is. Chance of fire on impact. To be honest, most engines are 20% or 15%. 15% is better. It means that if you get hit by a shell, you do stand a chance of getting set on fire if you get hit in the engine. Fires are really bad. They will keep burning for 7 or 8 seconds, I think it is, depending on crew skills, and they will do a lot of damage. You really want to equip a fire extinguisher, which we'll come to shortly, and put that fire out before it does too much damage. You'll take damage, you'll take module damage, it will knock out radio, crew, guns, all sorts. Very bad indeed. And then tracks. Tracks might seem unsexy, and they are unsexy, frankly, but what tracks allow you to do is they allow you to load more onto your tank. Let's go out to the front screen. I don't know if it will leave those windows open. It will. Brilliant. So on the right hand side here, you'll notice that the load limit here is 6.6 tons. What better tracks will do is it will increase it from 6.6 tons to 8.6 tons. With most tanks, tracks are the first thing you generally have to upgrade if you want to put on heavier items. Generally speaking, the better the guns, the better the turrets, the heavier they will be. It's not a good example because this gun, as you can see at the bottom, is actually slightly lighter. Let's look at the turret. Yeah, so here. The lighter turret is 170, which is the stock turret, and the heavier turret is 200. So, as a rule of thumb, certainly when you get to the higher tier tanks, you need to upgrade the tracks in order to take the weight of the extra modules, and that's pretty much a rule of thumb. Speaking of guns and moving up through levels, I need to impress upon you the importance, really, of not rushing through tiers, and let me give you a really good example why. You've got the German tier 6 medium tank, 3001P. Not a bad tank, and you'll see here that it leads to the Tiger P, which is the Porsche version of the Tiger. I'm not going to get into this right now, the differences, but I want to use this as an example. You can get the 3001P, and just by upgrading 2 turrets and 1 gun, you can move on to the Tiger P. Yay, brilliant, you've made it. So 7,500 experience, 4,600 there, so that's 12,000 experience. So after spending 57,000 experience, you can get to the Tiger P. You're thinking, I can't bother to unlock the radios and the engines, you know, and maybe you have to unlock the tracks, okay, for these 2 turrets and the gun. And you think, brilliant, I made it to the Tiger P, fantastic. I've not spent very long on the 3001P. This is great. I'm in a Tiger, yay. Yeah. What you've done though is you've moved the problem of being undergunned from tier 6 to tier 7. What do I mean by that? Well, let's have a look at the Tiger P. The Tiger P is tier 7, which means that he'll be facing tier 9 enemies. Now, what certainly a lot of the German tree does is it reuses modules. So let me give you an example. Let's go back to 3001P. The best engine on the 3001P is the Porsche Type 100/3. If you right click the engine and click characteristics, you can see that it's used on a variety of different vehicles, one of which is the Tiger P. So let's have a look. The Type 100/3. You can see that that's the Tiger P's top engine. Would you want to leave it to tier 7 to get the engine? Well, maybe. Let's also have a look. This gun, okay, you might think, well, if I get this gun, that's 9,500 experience I've spent up here, and it's not helping me get to the Tiger P. No, it's not. But let's have a look at the gun. The gun is used on a lot of other vehicles, of which one is the Tiger P. Let's have a look. It's the L56. And there we have it, it's there. What I'm getting at is that if you can unlock these modules on a tank of a lower level, it means that you're doing the hard work at tier 6, for instance, when you're facing a maximum of tier 8 vehicles, rather than at tier 7 when you're facing a maximum of tier 9. Because let me tell you, a stock Tiger P is painful. Most stock vehicles are painful. It means that you've got to grind to get to this engine. You've got to grind to get to this gun. What about the radio? Look, the radio is used in so many German vehicles. You can unlock it at the 3001P level. The engine, we've shown you can unlock. The only thing that you can't bring from the 3001P is the tracks. So why would you not do that at 3001P? Do not rush through to get to the next level if you can unlock a gun at the previous level. I've done it, and I've regretted it. Let me give you an example why. On a 3001P, you can get to the L56, you can unlock that, then you can progress to the Tiger P. That's great. The Tiger P starts with the gun, the L70, 75mm L70, 150 pen, very low damage. Really, you want to get to the long 88, the iconic long 88, which has 203mm of penetration, 240 damage. Yeah, damage is not great, but accuracy is really good. Rate of fire is not bad either. Now, say you rush through and you got to the Tiger P, you start with this gun. Penetration is, yeah, it's okay, but not if you're facing tier 9s. If you have this gun already, the short 88 which you unlocked on the 3001P, its penetration is less, and you're faced with the same problem facing tier 9s. That could be horrendous. But your damage is better. So if you're maybe in another tier 7 game, that you might get away with that. But the point is that you've saved yourself 9,500 XP at this level, and you're that much closer to the L71, this gun here, which is the gun you want to be putting on the Tiger P. You've only 16,500 away, rather than 9,500 and then 16,500. Because I'll tell you what, with this gun, you could be having serious issues. That is such a low damage output. Low damage means less experience and less silver. Unless you're super pro and you really know what you're doing and you make every shot count, you never miss anything, you never bounce anything, but that's quite unusual. This could be quite difficult, and also you've come up through the 3001P, you've unlocked everything here, fantastic. Your Tiger P starts with the top engine, the best radio. You need to unlock the turret and the tracks, okay? I understand that. You can't unlock that before, and you've unlocked the gun. So all you're really grinding towards is the tracks, the turret, and this gun, rather than all of it. And to be honest, if you're going for the Ferdinand, you could just go for the tracks. But again, you're kind of left with the same problem as you did before. You know, again, this is the engine that you've unlocked previously. You didn't unlock it on the Tiger P, you unlocked it on the 3001P. So with the German line especially, you do bring modules up through the different vehicles, and it's certainly worth just looking ahead and seeing what vehicles are compatible with the module that you've unlocked, and this will make you appreciate the next level of tank much more than you would if you just gone into it stock, because I'll tell you what, it's painful. I've done it, it's painful. Don't do it. Learn from my experience. Right, I think I've laboured that point enough. Let's move quickly on to the service button. So you've equipped your tank and you've gone into service and you look at your screen here. First thing you need to do is tick these boxes. I would recommend that heavily. This will repair your tank automatically, this will refill your ammunition automatically, and replace any consumables you've used. I'll come to these in a minute. Your ammunition is here, armor piercing. This is your ammunition you buy for silver. If you remember, I went through the gun types. Let me just quickly show that you here. So this left value is armor piercing, and that's this one. The middle value is your gold ammunition, which is this one, and this is your high explosive, which is this bottom one. So what I'd do is I would actually, certainly at this level, just max out on your armor piercing shells. At this tier 1 level, it makes no difference. As you get higher, take a little bit of high explosive, and if you fancy, take some gold, as maybe 3 or 4 gold shells. I'm not going to go into the details of high explosive right now because I think that's a little bit too early for this to know at this level, but just max out on these. Consumables, very important. I would always take a first aid kit, I would always take a repair kit, and I'd always take a manual fire extinguisher. I've seen countless times where people have been set on fire and they've just burnt out because they don't have a manual fire extinguisher. I mean, fires will burn out, as I said, after 7 or 8 seconds, but the amount of damage it will do, it will cripple your tank completely. A manual fire extinguisher means you can, as soon as you see it on fire, you press the corresponding button for this consumable and the fire will go out. You might be unlucky and be set on fire twice, but that hasn't happened to me very often. I can maybe count on one hand how many times that's happened. A first aid kit will repair a crew member. If you get your driver knocked out or your gunner knocked out, you are going to be a lot more ineffective. You're going to be more ineffective than you are at this point in time. And a repair kit will repair a module on your tank. So for instance, say you get your ammo rack hit, that will really slow down your reload to the point where it will make you quite painful to fire and put you at a severe disadvantage. So what I would do, I would take a repair kit, a first aid kit and a manual fire extinguisher. Other people might recommend other things, but for me that's worked and I will continue to do that, and it's very useful indeed. So I can't actually buy those because I haven't got any money. As you can see, it shows it in red, but I would certainly stock those items. Then what you do is you click on accept and then you're done. You're pretty much good to go. If you want, you can equip camo, as you can see on the outside of the tank. That's your winter camo. You've got your summer camo and then your desert camo here. It looks cool. Would you pay gold for it? Can do if you want to. Permanently costs gold. You can add it for 30 days, that costs silver, as you can see, 10,000 silver, or for 7 days, 2,500 silver. What camo does is it does improve your tank's camo rating. So for tanks of this level, I probably wouldn't bother, but for scout tanks, I absolutely would bother. One critical thing to mention about light tanks, and I've seen a lot of players fall into this trap, is that once light tanks become what's called scout tanks, and there is no icon definition here, because light tanks are kind of supposed to be scout tanks, but what most of the player base means by a scout tank is a scout tank like the Panzer 38 NA, for instance. What happens is when you hit tier 4 in a light tank, you become a scout tank effectively, and what this means is that you will find yourself in these higher tier games, tier 7s, tier 8s. Another example of a German scout tank is the Leopard, tier 5, looks at tier 4. These tanks here, and indeed up this line, this is your kind of scout tank line, but this affects the 38 NA as well, is you'll find yourself in these high tier games. The Leopard will find itself I think in 8 and 9, the VK2801 probably 9 and 10, and for the new player who's kind of got the Panzer II, that was great, and then Panzer IIG, lovely, and then I'll get the looks, fantastic. You can probably do this in a week, less than that. And you suddenly find yourself from playing kind of level 4 and level 4 or 5 tier tanks, the looks suddenly thrown up against tier 8 tanks, tier 9 tanks, and you're thinking, what the hell just happened? Your tank is one-shotted. It has 310 hit points. A lot of the tanks up at this level, especially Russian tanks, can do 400-500 hit point damage in one hit. So you find yourself vaporized. And you're thinking, well, what the hell happened there? What happens is you are now a scout tank. You are critical to the team in as far as you must spot. Spot for the big guys. Either passively spot by sitting in a bush, camo this tank up as far as it can go, get camo, get a camo net, you know, and basically don't get spotted. Don't fire, because the chances of you being able to penetrate anything are really, really small. The gun on the looks, for instance, the best gun is the 90mm, not the 90mm, 30mm, I think it's this one. Yeah, 95 penetration. That probably won't go through the front of most tanks at that level. Be smart. Don't get spotted. Passively scout. Sit in a bush. Spot enemy tanks. If you think you're going to be compromised, move. If you get spotted, move. Be smart. That's the thing about scout tanks. So just be aware when you get to tier 4 in these light tanks, not all of them. No, in fact it is all of them, because once you get to tier 4 only the scout tanks keep on going. The other light tanks disappear, as you'll notice. They turn into medium tanks or heavy tanks. So once you get to tier 4, any light tanks that you've got, not just the Germans, with any tree, the Americans for instance, Stuart, Chaffee for instance, you'll start getting to these higher tier games. Be aware of that, be prepared for it, because don't let it be a surprise. It's something that I think Wargaming need to make more obvious, as it can catch a lot of people out. Okay, so one other area that you can equip your tank in is the area down here, which is basically equipment you can buy for your tank. These are not like consumables which are used up after you use them once. So for instance, like the fire extinguisher or the first aid kit for instance, these are persistent pieces of equipment, and that's reflected in the price. As you go up through the different tiers, some of these actually go up in price and are not compatible. So for instance, improved ventilation class 1, that's fine for I think it's light tanks, but as you go up to medium is class 2 and then heavy is class 3. They are not compatible with each other's types of tiers, and so therefore the silver price increases. These are not available for gold, so it's all silver. I'm not going to go through all of these right now, but certainly the ones I'd recommend on most tanks is ventilation. Is also, there's a couple here which aren't listed. Now you can't put all equipment on all types of tanks. There are exceptions. So for instance, there's an item called a gun rammer, which speeds up your reload time. I'd recommend one of those as well, but not on this particular model of tank or tier of tanks. Also, gun laying drive helps you aim faster, plus 10%. Again, aiming speed and reload time are some things that your gunner skills will affect. And your loader. So your loader affects reload, and your gunner's skill affects aim time. So certainly I'd recommend ventilation, gun rammer for reload, and your third option, aiming speed, depends on your tank gun's aim time. If it's up into kind of the far 2 seconds into 3 seconds, I'd recommend one of these. Otherwise you could choose something else. And you've got things here to improve your view range. You know, coated optics, binocular telescopes. One of these, coated optics, works whether you're moving or not. Binocular telescopes works after you've stopped moving for 2 or 3 seconds. Just very briefly, over here on the right hand side is the accumulation of all the stats from all the items that you've actually equipped on your tank. So things like signal range you've got over here, your load limit up here 9.2, turret controls your view range, so that's down here. As you upgrade your turret and as you upgrade your tracks and other bits and pieces, these items over here change. One thing I wouldn't state here is that these are your base tank stats based on the modules you're fitted. So these items, these do not show your skills affecting these for the better or for the worse, nor does it show any stats over here that are affected by the equipment you fitted. So that's worth bearing in mind as well. So what I'm going to do now is just go through a quick game I'll play the first game live, so you can see exactly what it's like to take part in the game. As I said, I would recommend you do the tutorials before you play your first game, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight ahead and hit the battle button up here. This tells me how many people are in the queue, 174 people in the queue, how many types of people are in the queue, what sort of vehicles they're in, and what tiers they are. So we're down at the bottom here, tier 1, 17 other tier 1s in the queue with me. And normally, depending on the time of day, you'll get matched up fairly quickly. Okay, so here we go. So we've been placed into a game on a map called Mines. This is one of the 3 or 4 maps that are ideal for beginners, and you'll be limited to these 3 or 4 maps until you progress up through the tiers. So on the left hand side up here, you'll see the team list. You'll see that my tank is listed and has an orange highlight. On the right hand side is the enemy team. I'm going to make the minimap bigger by pressing the equals key, and you can see myself on the minimap.
Let's go.
So the game starts. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over here, and I'm going to cover the left hand side of the map. You'll notice in the bottom left hand corner you see my hit points, 110, the speed of the vehicle, which is 18 kilometers an hour currently, and as I turn the tank you'll see that the bottom panel reflects that. So this is a purely tier 1 game. You'll notice that the tank tier markers are up there on the left hand side on the panel, and by using Control Tab you can expand out or minimise the side panels or make them disappear completely. I'm just going to keep them minimised for now because I don't need to see player names. So the tanks are not particularly fast, but they're good enough. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to push on down, try and get over to the centre island as soon as I can. Now bushes are your friend. If you remember, I mentioned earlier about scouting, you can sit in a bush and passive scout. So let me give you an example here. If in fact, let's just knock this tree down. Now, if you hold down the right mouse button, you can actually move around your tank, and you'll notice that no part of my tank is showing in front of the bush. That means I'm hidden from view unless I fire or unless I move. Now you notice there that there's a tank, so I'm going to zoom in. I'll press the shift key or roll in on the mouse. You just said I did some damage, and I've killed him. So I've now got a credit of 1 hit to my name. Now, if I've been spotted by that tank, I don't know that I have been, because I don't have the 6th sense skill. So I'm going to wait a couple of seconds. Now it's safe to move. I will have become unspotted again for the rest of the team. So I'm going to push on up. Different terrain affects your tank in different ways. So going through water generally slows your tank down quite badly. Oh, there's another tank. I'm going to keep moving because I'm out in the open. If I shoot at him, I risk potentially being spotted. So I'm going to try and get into cover before I fire. I could have stopped and fired, but that's not a smart thing to do. You can of course fire on the move, but your aim is significantly degraded. But don't let that stop you if you have a gun which is rapidly firing, or if you're not worried about ammo cost. But just think about what you're doing, because firing does light you up like a Christmas tree. So you'll see that we're actually winning 8-1 at the moment, so our team is fairly significantly in the lead here. And for that reason I'm going to keep pushing. Be careful when you go off edges. You can do damage to yourself by doing that. But if you manage your speed going off the edges there, you'll be fine. I mean, a general rule of thumb is always keep the front of your tank pointed towards the enemy and angle it slightly if you can. That way any shots coming in might ricochet off you. It's always a good rule of thumb. I was hoping this game to last slightly longer. It looks like it's going to be a bit of a whitewash. You'll see on the minimap that I can't actually see the rest of the team which are on the far side of the map due to my poor radio. Remember, this is just a stock loadout on this tank. Everything's very standard. Nothing's been upgraded on this tank. So the enemy base is in the top there in A2, as you can see on the minimap, and that's where we have to either capture or we need to kill all the enemy in order to win the game. There's only 1 enemy left, as you can see on the right hand side now, so the chances are he could well be near their base or on the far side of the map, and I can't see him. Going downhill, there he is. So I'm going to stop, angle my tank slightly, zoom in. It looks like he's AFK.
penetration.
So although I hit him, another tank actually put in the final blow. And that's it. Game's over. We've won. You notice that the end screen now shows a victory page. This might say defeat or draw, depending on how the actual game worked out. So let me just go through this very quickly, and I'll explain what all these things mean. Down here, let me just show you this as well. You can actually get to the details of. So if you click on that and you minimise it, you want to have a look at it, maybe for an earlier game. You click on details, and this pops up. I would just note, if you have quit the game completely, not the actual game you're playing, the match you're playing, but the actual client, and come back into it, and you have one of these, you won't be able to see the details, so just bear that in mind. Now, what does this mean? This is Mastery Badge 3rd class. Each tank has Mastery Badges, so as it says here, if you get more experience in the battle than the average highest experience earned in the last week by 50% of the other players, you will earn a Mastery Badge. So this means that I've accrued more experience in this tank, 50% more of the other players who fought in it in this last week. So I've got a Mastery 3 badge. I earned 549 base experience and 2,658 silver. And you can see that this is up here now: 2,658 silver and 549 experience. What I've done here, let's go down this side. So that's without premium. It tells me, quite craftily, if I had premium, I would have earned almost 4,000 silver, and I would have earned 822 experience. So this is basically 50% extra. I've also made some progress towards these missions. So the Road to Victory mission, I've survived one game out of 125 games, and I've done 85 damage in that last game out of 50,000 in order to win a prize. Over here, what have I done? These symbols, if you just hover over the symbols, this means that I've done damage, critical damage to this vehicle, and in this instance I've knocked out his track, or done track damage. And hovering over here means I've done 36 damage with 1 shell penetration. On this tank, I knocked out his track and destroyed a track. I hit him twice, did 49 damage, and I actually killed the vehicle completely. On the team score tab, you can arrange this by columns, so if you can arrange it by experience earned, and I came kind of down here. To be honest, I chose a flank where there wasn't much action, so I kind of did the best I could, but certainly not as good as this T1 guy at the top. You can arrange by damage, so 85 damage, or you can arrange by the amount of vehicles killed. So this one guy in the T1 obviously done very well. If you want to see what players' stats are, you can actually, on here, you can right click and choose user details. And we can see here that the guy's played 9,000 battles and he's got a 58% win rate. So he's a very experienced player, and he's playing in Tier 1, in a Tier 1 battle, so you'd expect him to do quite well. This is known as seal clubbing in the game, where experienced players come down to these lower levels and take advantage maybe of the players who are new to the game, who might not know exactly what they're doing. Oh, the other tab, sorry, before I clicked off that, is detailed reports, and this gives you a lot more stats and information for the stats junkies who might want to go to the nth degree about the information. So for instance, I travelled just under a kilometre, I received 2,658 silver, and also was there any fines for causing damage to allies? If I'd got any damage, my vehicle would have been auto repaired. You'll also notice as a result of that game, my 0% has now increased to 5% on these skills that I've picked. So you remember that I've talked about the specialists, so let me just go on that. And you'll see that it will cost me 125 experience to go up to 6%. So go up by 1%, I need to earn 125 experience. Let me just very quickly show you the research screen. Now I actually have some experience, I can now spend that in certain areas. So for instance, I have 549 experience, and from that game 5% of the experience that I've earned has gone into what's called free experience. Now free experience means I can use that on any tank. So for instance, if I go across to the MS1 and click on research, I have 27 free experience to spend on this tank. Or if I go to another tank, I have 27 free experience to spend on this tank as well. So 5% of your experience that you earn goes into your free experience pool, which is very, very useful for unlocking guns or tracks or modules in general on other vehicles that you haven't actually fought in. So let me just show you what happens when you research. So I'm going to research the tracks here, like that. Do you want to research them? Yes I do, yes please. And I've researched them, and now it will cost me 540 silver to buy them. So if I just click on that, and you can purchase them. I'd also quite like to research the engine, so I'm going to do that. Yes, please. Now the other way that you can buy these modules is actually from the screen here. So you click on that, and you'll notice the engine, I can buy it from here as well, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to go back to the research screen. I'm going to buy the research the turret. Let me just unlock that from here. Not unlock it, sorry, buy it. You'll just watch the turret. As soon as you equip the better turret, and you'll see here that the turret, the view range is significantly better, but the traverse is slightly slower. You traverse at 44 degrees, but it's actually 39 on the upper turret. So as soon as I pick that, you'll notice in the background the turret will change. See, it's got slightly smaller, so it's less of a target, basically. Going to upgrade the radio, that lovely, and I'm going to buy that from here. And you can upgrade the gun, should you want to as well. But let's go upgrade the engine very quickly again. You'll notice that it's actually that's just from playing one game. So from playing one game, I've actually upgraded this tank quite significantly now. You'll notice that I've not upgraded the gun because, frankly, I think the stock gun on this starting light tractor is actually pretty good. The penetration is really rather good. If you consider that you've got 40 penetration and that most of these starting vehicles have about 14mm of hull armour, 14-16 around that, it's actually a very good gun. So I'm going to actually hang on to that. So now I'm pretty much good to go for my second battle with a slightly upgraded tank, which will be faster, and will have a better view range as well. So yeah, it's looking good. As you can see, it's very easy to progress through the starting tanks. The other thing that I should mention here is that I didn't mention earlier. You'll notice on the detail screen that the experience I got was actually times by 3. On your first battle of each day, your first winning battle, should I say, you get times 2 experience for your tank. We have special on at the moment, so it's actually times by 3, but it's actually times by 2. So you notice now that the little symbol here, X3, that's now gone for this tank because I've earned that. I've won a battle in it, I've had my times 3 experience, and so that's disappeared. If I play another game in this tank, that experience will now just count as you get it, and it won't be times by anything. The rest of the tanks I'm at liberty to play the times 3 with. So it's worth playing the times 3, even on the tanks you don't particularly care about, because you are earning free experience to use as you see fit. So that's something to bear in mind. You might not care about the French tank line, but play the times by 3s if you can, because you do get that free experience. And you never know, you might want to come back to it a bit later on, and because you've played those few games and you've actually earned some experience on that tank already, so it saves you a little bit of time later on, as well as earning you that free experience. So I think that's pretty much it from me, just as an absolute beginner's guide. There is an awful lot more to the game. I haven't even touched upon angling your tank or really aiming for weak spots on tanks, because at this starting level I don't think it matters so much. Certainly it's something that I will go into a lot more detail about, because it becomes critical as you advance up through the tank tiers. But this is just to get you going with the game, to answer questions you might have had. What does this symbol mean, or why is it doing that? Just to get you started, have a bit of fun and play the game with a bit more knowledge. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have any questions that I've not answered or any observations, please leave a comment, and I'll be watching the comments and responding where possible. But in the meantime, as I said, I hope you find it useful, and I will catch you next time. Take care out there.